I'm really pumped to have our first guest. We're hitting right out of the chute here because it was a week ago today when we hit the air, and we read the report from Brett McMurphy from the Action Network that the Mountain West was considering adding North Dakota State to its conference lineup, which for those of us who have been covering this for a long time, this was the first direct line that we had on potentially the Bison and joining potentially FBS, and Brett is good enough to join us this morning. I really appreciate the time. This has been DEFCON 5 up here since your story broke on Wednesday. Give us first the background on this, Brett, and what you've heard of the interest in the Mountain West in relation to North Dakota State, and how early in your reporting did this start? Oh, I think your mic is muted there. There we go.
There, you got me?
I got you, bud. Go ahead. Sorry about that.
Got to press all the buttons. No, I've been, obviously covering conference realignment on all levels for a long time. And, you just kind of follow the breadcrumbs. And, I reported previously that Northern Illinois and Toledo had been contacted by the Mountain West about potential membership as football-only members, and then that appears to not be materializing. And so basically the Mountain West needs a 9th football member. They currently have 8 set for 2026. And I think they would, and this is not negative towards North Dakota State, but I think they would prefer somebody that's currently in the FBS ranks. The problem for the Mountain West is there's nobody that's available. I mean, that realistically they can get. They don't have any interest in New Mexico State. They're not going to get anybody to leave, obviously, a power conference or the American. Sun Belt doesn't make sense. Conference USA, there's a few teams there. I don't think those are sought after by the Mountain West. And so, the best option would then come from the FCS. And I talked to a number of people that, quite frankly, think that North Dakota State would be a better option than a lot of the FBS teams that, they could go after, or even better than a Northern Illinois or Toledo. So, it's basically the Mountain West needs this 9th team because in 2026, 8's the minimum number you need to be a FBS program.
Right.
FBS conference, excuse me. But they cannot do that schedule-wise because with only 8 teams, then you've got 3 home games, 4 road games in the conference schedule. You would need to schedule 5 non-conference games. That's not happening in today's current environment in college athletics with all these bloated conferences. There simply aren't enough available teams, especially on that side of the country. And so they're hell-bent on finding a 9th team. And I was told that, North Dakota State is somebody that they are considering. That doesn't mean it's going to happen tomorrow, next week, next month. But, when they make this move, it would happen for the 2026 season. And my understanding is, I don't know if you're familiar with James Madison when they moved up and joined the Sun Belt, they would be able to compete if that happened in 2026 in the Mountain West, but they would not be eligible for a bowl game or the college football playoff. It's part of that transitioning from FCS to FBS. And so they would have to actually wait until 2027 before they would have a shot to get into the playoff as the highest ranked Group of 5 champion, or of course get into a bowl game, similar to how it was with James Madison last year.
Brett, how real, we've discussed this on this show for the last 6 months on the FBS, at least the leaders of it maybe think, Greg Sankey, Tony Petitti, that it's too bloated. How real is the pressure from those guys to not add any more FCS teams?
It's real enough that I've heard that from multiple people from, within the Mountain West and from other conferences. It's not like it's just coming from, when I obviously report a lot of news, you hear certain things, and if it's coming from one camp, you're like, well, maybe that's a narrative they want out there, and they're, you kind of I kind of push back on it.
Right.
But now I was hearing it from a lot of different parts of the country, and I still don't understand the reason why. I mean, ultimately, you could add 10 more teams to the FBS, and it's not going to impact the SEC or the Big Ten. Their money in the college football playoff is not going to diminish. I guess it's a lot more, the devil's in the details. Maybe it's related somehow to these house settlements and different things that are kind of getting, that are covering the collegiate landscape. And I honestly don't know.
Yeah.
I haven't got a good explanation why, but it is enough of a concern that I know that there's some within the Mountain West that are pushing back on a FCS school. Again, nothing against North Dakota State, any FCS school, because of these concerns. When you have, the most powerful individuals in college athletics, and basically you want to stay on their good side, ultimately, will that keep the Mountain West or any other conferences from adding more FCS schools? We'll find out. I mean, you mentioned Missouri State. A few years ago, I don't know if you knew this, I think the amount to join the FBS, moving from the FCS to the FBS, the NCAA required, I think it was $1,000 or $5,000. And then literally they had one meeting and they said, okay, the new rate going is $5 million. I mean, yeah, that's a joke. But anyway, it is real. Can the SEC and the Big Ten keep other leagues from adding FCS members? Absolutely not. But somewhere down the road, would they hold that against those leagues? That I can't say that, but that is the fear of some of these smaller conferences.
There's about 18 million questions I'd like to ask on this. I know your time is limited.
Fire away.
How much support from your reporting you gather inside the Mountain West, I guess, is there for North Dakota State? And you've known how well we cover it all the time, how great they've been at the FCS level, that transition, that they could be like James Madison. James Madison's had instant success at the FBS level. Does the Mountain West envision that with NDSU?
Well, if they don't, I do. I mean, my God, the success NDSU's had, the 9 national championships, I don't have all the data in front of me. You probably have it memorized. The record against FBS opponents, playing in the non-conference. Absolutely. I think it, again, in the new world of college athletics, geography doesn't matter anymore. We know that with what the Big Ten and ACC have done, but it does also make sense geography wise. It helps out Wyoming, kind of locks them in, on that up northern part of the country. I think that helps out. Yeah, absolutely. And I think when you talk to football people, absolutely, it would be a great ad for the Mountain West or any FBS conference out there. And that's why I mentioned earlier that, when I reported the Northern Illinois stuff earlier, and then later the North Dakota State, I had people tell me, well, look, if I was the Mountain West, I'd take North Dakota State over Northern Illinois as far as a future football commodity. And yeah, I do not disagree with that at all.
Since you made your initial report a week ago, have you heard anything new? Any new reporting? Have North Dakota State and the Mountain West talked, from what you can gather?
Basically the latest I've heard was, quote, nothing new at this point.
Okay.
So that's about as much as I know. I don't want to speculate on what that means because I didn't follow up further. I'm like, okay, I'll continue to dig around. So nothing new at that point. So I guess no news is good news.
That was my next thing I was going to say. That was my next thing I was going to say. So is no news good news then, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, it's no one has an invitation and no one's been eliminated.
Okay.
So yeah, so you're saying there's a chance.
The aspect of this that I'm really intrigued with is the access to the college football playoff. And I know it's impossible to predict this, Brett, but by 2026, who knows? They could already expand from 12 to 16. In your reporting, does the group of five still ensure themselves of at least a seat at the table of getting one spot in the college football playoff?
Well, yeah, so here's what, and I'm glad you brought that up. So yeah, in 2026, we know that there's going to be a 12, excuse me, we don't know it's a 12 team playoff.
Right.
We know there is a playoff in 2026.
Yeah.
Now it could be 12 teams, it could be 14, it could be 64. We don't know. The commissioners, the 9 conference commissioners and the Notre Dame athletic director have yet to make that decision. They will figure that out after this season. They have said that they want to see how the current 12 team playoff goes. What, are there any fly in the ointments? What worked with it? What didn't? Before going forward. So we are guaranteed this current 12 team format this year and next year. For the 2026 regular season, we don't know what it's going to look like. However, the group of 5 absolutely will have one guaranteed bid, because if they don't, all the conference commissioners, the power league, et cetera, will get pulled in front of Congress, and that's not a pretty sight. So as long as all of the entire country has access to the college football playoff, the group of 5 will have the minimum of one automatic bid. Now, if you want to go a little bit further down the road, some of your younger folks, 5, 10, 15 years down the road, we could get to a point where the SEC and or the Big Ten, their conferences have now grown to 20 teams,
Right.
potentially 24 teams, and they basically say, screw it. We don't need to include Conference USA in this. We don't need to include the Big 12 or the ACC for that matter. We are going to stage our own playoff with our 2 leagues, because we own the 48 biggest brands in college athletics. So would the group 5 be involved in that? No, but that would be a SEC Big 10 only thing.
Yeah.
A lot of people have talked about that, an NFL type model. And then basically everyone else would kind of do their own thing, and how that would be configured, who knows at that point. But yeah, at least for the near future, yeah, the group of 5 will have that one available spot. And, as you see this year, I mean, Boise State,
Yep.
They look, like they got a shot, but there's a possibility Army could do it. So that's what makes this thing so fascinating, that, if you can win your conference at the group 5 level, you have a legitimate shot to get in the playoff and then see what happens.
Brett, I'm TV obsessed with this. I work in this business, obviously. The Mountain West TV contract, I know this is impossible to predict, but when you look at that for 2026, and there's only so many networks. I know you used to work at ESPN. What are the available networks that could pick up the Mountain West and be interested in a North Dakota State if they end up getting into it for 2026, in your opinion?
Well, look, everyone will have an interest. It's just what they're going to pay for it.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, when I was at ESPN, that the Big East, back when they had a football league, they had an offer from ESPN for an amount to do their games. The ESPN or the Big East turned it down, said, no, we're not doing it. We're going to the open market. So then NBC Sports came in and they made an offer, and it was actually less than what ESPN had initially offered. Well, that contract back then gave ESPN the right to match any offers to continue being a partner of the Big East. Well, ESPN, I know this firsthand. They had decided, we're done with the Big East. We're going to move on. There's enough other conferences to fill our programming. But then when they saw the numbers that NBC was paying them, they're like, oh my God, for this cheap, we've got to take it.
Yeah.
So then they took it because of because of the money. Um, I do know that, the reason Northern Illinois and Toledo are considering um, or would have interest in the Mountain West is because the Mountain West TV deal is approximate, 5 million per team. That's much more than the MAC gets, which I think would surprise a lot of people because MAC is such high profile. This
Right.
month they all play all their games on the weekdays, MACs and all that stuff. But yeah, they don't make a lot of money off of that. So I think apples comparison, the American, I believe, is around 7-8 million maybe. I think the Mountain West is 5. The Pac-12, they have to go to market. I know that they believe that they're going to get, upwards of 10 million per team. I'm told that there ain't no way that's happening. I think they're going to get more. I think they're going to get more in line with the Mountain West does,
Okay.
which is around the 5 million number. And that's going to be fascinating because I mentioned the Mountain West, while not required to add one team, they do want to add one team. The Pac-12 still has to find one more member.
Right.
They
Yep.
Absolutely have to. And where are they going to get that member from? Because teams in the American are not going to leave for less money. Could they possibly come after some teams still in the Mountain West? There's look, anything's possible, but yeah, for TV numbers, it just, could there be a streaming service that comes
Right.
after the Mountain West? I mean, there's a number of options. I do know from this last round of realignment with the Pac-12, with the Big 12, et cetera, and the failed TV rights deal with the Pac-12 that blew them up, is you may be able to get a little bit more money with the streaming services, but I know a lot of university presidents and athletic directors have problems not being on
TV.
just regular old good old fashioned TV, where you can just click on and there it is. You don't have to go through 5 different apps to find your game. But again, it depends on, do you want money? Do you want exposure? Do you want both? I know a big negative on being on the streaming services is there's no drumbeat, from that network during the day, during the week. Hey, later this week, we've got our Mountain West games, we've got our Big Ten games, whatever. I mean, watching Sunday Night Football, and they're promoting the Big Ten games coming up this weekend.
Right.
I mean, you can't pay for that amount of free advertising. So that's probably a more long, convoluted answer than you wanted, but it's not really simple, and there's not a right or wrong answer. It's just basically what your priority is as a league. Is it money? Is it access? Is it availability to viewerships? It's a number of different factors.
2 last things for you, bud, and I really appreciate your time. For what you're reporting, is the Mountain West just good with 9? I know it's impossible to predict this, or in your reporting, are they looking at adding beyond 9?
No, I believe 9 is what they want to settle at. And This is different than, like the Big Ten. They added, the SC, UCLA, Washington, Oregon. The SEC added Texas and Oklahoma. They added more than one school. Well, the reason why they did that is the power conferences and their deals, when they add additional members, ESPN and or Fox must pay that conference X amount of millions of dollars per school that they add. So if you add 4 schools, if you're the Big Ten, if you add 2 schools, if you're the SEC, if you're the SEC, you're the ACC, and you add 3 schools, the networks are required to pay you the same amount of money for each additional addition up to a capped number of teams. That is not the case at the Group 5 level. The contracts are different. So that's why I'm told, and I believe very strongly, they will stay at 9, because there's nobody out there you could bring in that's going to add more value to the overall TV deal. And by that, I mean, you think, I compare it to a pizza. You've got a large pizza and you sit down at the table and you're going to divide it into 8 pieces. Well, now you add a ninth member, and the pizza, it's the same size pizza, but now you cut it into 9 slices. Now everybody's slice is smaller. If you go to 10, then it's going to be even smaller. The difference is in those large conferences, when you add a number of teams, the pizza gets bigger by more slices. So that's why, yeah, they're looking for one, and that's it.
Okay.
There's nobody out there that would make the pizza grow bigger, if you will. It would just make the slices get smaller.
Yep.
So yeah, I think they're set on 9 right now, and then obviously they added Grand Canyon as a non-football member,
Yep.
basketball playing member as a 10th team, but that obviously would not impact the football revenue side of it.
This has been awesome. My last question, and this is impossible to maybe answer or predict, but the Mountain West wants an answer. The TV networks want an answer. What would be the expected time that there's a resolution in this, in your opinion?
I'm sure everybody wants me to say very soon, but I think it's probably going to be a few months.
Yep.
I don't think there's any really key deadlines that needs to get something done right away. I think something, kind of for people to keep their eye on the Pac-12. Like I said, they're in the process of trying to get a real legitimate value on what their TV deal may be worth.
Yep.
So they're going to various networks trying to get those numbers. And so once they do, I think the Pac-12 will be aggressive to get something done, because they absolutely have to get somebody in for 26 to meet the NCAA requirements. I would say by the end of the academic school year, which would be by this May, I think we'd see something happening. I think obviously the Mountain West and also the Pac-12 on a lesser extent, they'd like to do this tomorrow if they could, but it just at this point,
Yeah.
It doesn't move that quickly. So I think by the end of spring, I think is a legitimate timetable. Maybe it moves sooner. Hopefully it does. But I don't think you can go any further than that, because then you're getting into the
Right.
2025 academic school year, and then you're basically you're only looking at a 1-year notice before leaving. And I know that conferences and schools don't like to do it that quickly with that short of a turnaround.
Brett, this was so awesome. I really appreciate the time. You made a lot of people real excited about what potentially could happen here. We'll do this again. Thanks so much for making time for us this morning.
You got it. Thank you.
Brett McMurphy from the Action Network reported the story, broke the story on potentially North Dakota State going to the Mountain West Conference. That was fantastic. That was really good.